The U.S. Coast Guard continues recovery efforts on the site of the Titan's wreck on the ocean floor. A week after the catastrophic implosion that killed all 5 passengers aboard the fated submersible, the Coast Guard announced that ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, remain in place near where the Titan vanished. The ROV that made the critical finding of the Titan's chambers 1,600 feet from the Titanic's wreckage, the Odysseus 6K, was launched again on Sunday in further efforts to recover more debris, according to the company that operated the deep-sea robot. We continue to work tirelessly in our support role of this mission, alongside the incredible crew of Horizon Artic, the Canadian vessel that carried the Odysseus to the sea. Pelagic Research Services CEO Ed Cassano said, Coast Guard officials have previously admitted that recovery efforts will be challenging due to the unforgiving conditions of the ocean floor. Meanwhile, the wife and mother of 2 passengers who perished in the tragedy revealed that she was on board the Titan's mothership when it lost communication with the submersible just an hour and 45 minutes into its descent. Christine Dawood said her husband, Shahzada, and son, Suleiman, were excited to go on the mission. It was supposed to be Shahzad and I are going down, and then I stepped back and gave the space to Suleiman because he really wanted to go, she said. A Florida couple who sued Stockton Rush for refusing to refund their $210,000 deposit for a Titanic shipwreck tour have dropped the lawsuit after the OceanGate Expeditions CEO was among 5 to die in a catastrophic implosion last week. Mark and Sharon Hagel filed a lawsuit in February claiming Rush had repeatedly canceled a deep-sea dive they had booked on the Titan submersible in 2018. After Rush was confirmed to have died on the Titan during an ill-fated trip to the famed North Atlantic shipwreck on Sunday the 18th of June, the couple said the honor, respect, and dignity of the victims were more important than their claim. Mark and Sharon Hagel alleged OceanGate repeatedly canceled tours and then refused to repay a $210,000 deposit. Voice recordings and other data will be reviewed as part of a U.S. Coast Guard-appointed expert board's probe into the catastrophic implosion of the Titan submersible last week. American and Canadian marine authorities have announced investigations into the circumstances that led to the vessel's malfunction after its chambers were found in a sea of debris 1,600 feet from the wreck of the Titanic. U.S. Coast Guard Captain Jason Neubauer, who is chairing the investigation, said during a press conference on Sunday that he has summoned a Marine Board of Investigation, the highest level of investigation conducted by the Coast Guard. The board's role is to determine the cause of the tragedy in order to pursue civil or criminal sanctions as necessary. Voice recordings between the Titan and its mothership Polar Prince will be reviewed by investigators. The mothership's crew is also being interviewed by different agencies. Investigators with the Coast Guard have mapped the accident site and salvage operations are expected to continue, Captain Jason Neubauer said. Once the investigation is wrapped, a timeline has not been laid out. A report with evidence, conclusions, and recommendations will be released. 2 memorials were held last week at Titanic museums across the U.S. in honor of the 5 people who died earlier this month on a submarine expedition to the famous shipwreck. The services were held at Titanic museums in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and Branson, Missouri. Both museums are owned by John Josone, part of a team that explored the Titanic wreckage in a famous 1987 televised expedition. Investigators looking into the implosion of the Titan submersible are taking all precautions in case they find bodies on the seafloor. It has emerged. Captain Jason Neubauer, who is chairing the U.S. Coast Guard investigation into the implosion of the vessel, made the comments as the search and rescue aspects of the response came to an end. British adventurer Hamish Harding and father and son Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood were killed on board the submersible, alongside the American chief executive of the company responsible for the vessel, Stockton Rush, and French national Paul-Henri Nargeolet. Salvage operations are continuing and investigators have mapped the accident site, Captain Neubauer told a press conference in Boston. He also said the convening of a Marine Board of Investigation is the highest level of investigation conducted by the U.S. Coast Guard. It is unclear how long it will take. Christine Dawood was on board a support vessel Sunday when she got word that communications were lost with the submersible carrying her husband and son to view the Titanic wreckage. She didn't initially understand what it meant that the Titan submersible had lost contact with the ship an hour and 45 minutes into its voyage, Ms. Dawood told Monday. It would be 4 more days before she would learn the fate of her husband Shahzada Dawood and son Suleiman Dawood, when authorities announced Thursday the vessel carrying 5 people had imploded and there were no survivors. "We all thought they are just going to come up," she said. "That shock was delayed about 10 hours or so. There was a time where they were supposed to be up on the surface. When that time passed, that is when the worry and not so good feelings started." Christine Dawood says she and her 17-year-old daughter, Alina, were on the Polar Prince when tragedy struck. When millionaire Steve Fawcett's plane went missing over the Nevada range in 2007, the swashbuckling adventurer had already been the subject of 2 prior emergency rescue operations thousands of miles apart. And that prompted a prickly question. After a sweeping search for the wealthy risk-taker ended, who should foot the bill? In recent days, the massive hunt for a submersible vehicle lost during a North Atlantic descent to explore the wreckage of the Titanic has refocused attention on that conundrum. And with rescuers and the public fixated first on saving and then on mourning those aboard, it has again made for uneasy conversation. 5 people have just lost their lives, and to start talking about insurance, all the rescue efforts and the cost can seem pretty heartless. But the thing is, at the end of the day, there are costs, said Arun Upneja, Dean of Boston University's School of Hospitality Administration and a researcher on tourism. Popular YouTuber Mr. Beast has claimed that he turned down a trip on the Titanic submarine that imploded earlier this week. Police in Canada announced on Saturday that they are considering a criminal investigation over the deaths of 5 men in the OceanGate submersible implosion. Superintendent Kent Osmond of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, in Newfoundland and Labrador said law enforcement were in the early stages of the probe. Following the U.S. Coast Guard's announcement earlier this week that debris from the submersible was located and all 5 on board were presumed dead, we will now look at the circumstances that led to those deaths, Mr. Osmond said at a press conference.